in the middle of one of Hollywood's biggest studios, Universal. And lurking somewhere behind me in one of these unattractive-looking trailers is the creative force behind one of the most successful low-budget horror movies of recent years, The Evil Dead, and its imaginatively titled sequel, The Evil Dead 2, Mr. Sam Raimi.
Say, I was just wondering, do they have blood banks in England?
No.
But they have a Liverpool.
When The Evil Dead was released in 1982, it attracted rave reviews. Stephen King called it the most ferociously original horror film of the year. Yet the film had initially been turned down by every American distributor who had seen it. The Evil Dead was an independent production, financed by a group of doctors, lawyers and dentists from America's Midwest, and it marked the feature film debut of writer and director Sam Raimi, who remarkably was only 19 at the time.
There are two schools of thought, I think, for horror filmmakers. One is that the audience can always create something more horrible than you can show them. And the other school of thought is show them, show them, show them, everything. And I believe that both is true. I believe the audience can come up with something more horrible in their minds than I can show them, provided they're given the raw materials to construct something. And I also believe that I have got some pretty horrible things to show myself, so I try and mix and match. I try and scare them and weird them out with visuals, and I try and leave room for them to add their own ingredients to create.
Although this was his first feature, Sam had already directed a handful of Super 8 movies, which had given him the chance to develop a distinctive and confident style. Let's go back to the beginning. How did you get started in filmmaking in the first place? What kind of movies were you making before The Evil Dead?
Before The Evil Dead, my friends and myself, just a group of school chums, and I would make Super 8 comedies. Three Stooges comedies.
I think you're I know. Lawyers who do it twice that don't know nothing.
No. Please, boys, control yourselves. Listen, you hit a man with glasses, would you?
Oh.
Oh, my glasses. Let's see. What? Ah! There they are. Oh, my glasses.
Oh, it's you, Paul. I'm glad I ran across you.
There was a nucleus of about 6 of us who had this interest, and we all were split apart in different neighborhoods. We had a little neighborhood here, and Sam was over in his little neighborhood making Super 8 movies. Sam did a lot of magic, and so film seemed like a natural extension for him to do that. And so he was doing these silly little movies, and I was doing silly little movies. And another guy, Scott Spiegel, who co-wrote Evil Dead 2, was making like Three Stooge rip-offs, where he'd use the actual soundtrack but put in his own visuals. And then we kind of all hooked up in high school, and then we found that, you know, one guy had costumes and another guy had a good camera. So we combined all of our facilities, and then we were able to, on weekends, we just would go out and shoot.
Bruce Campbell starred in every Super 8 movie that we made because, very simply, he was the good-looking one and still is. So he said, the girls like you, we'll put you in front of the camera. The girls don't like us, we'll stay behind the camera. And only when Bruce was unavailable would we put ourselves in front of the camera.
But you show some raw acting ability in those. Why didn't you stay in front more? Why did you choose to direct?
I don't think I showed any acting ability, and I stick my face in any movie that I can, truthfully, shamelessly, to get my mug on the screen.
And this is for all the times you mistreated me.
Hit him that hard?
I didn't hit him that hard. I hit him like this.
You did not. You hit him like this.
No, it was more like this.
Crazy, it was softer than I was like this.
Will you stop? Stop! Wait a minute. You forgot your suitcase.
Why are the Three Stooges such an influence on you? What do you like about them?
I like their physical comedy and their sound effects. You know, the hyper-real shticks that they do. And they just make me laugh. They just make me laugh, and I've seen them make big audiences laugh in the theaters.
We should have gone home like he said, you stubborn mule. Oh, why you? Get out. Oh!
Tell us about 6 Months to Live. That's not a Three Stooges plot, is it?
It's Three Stooge-like. And certainly we've ripped off, stolen blatantly as 16-year-olds, many Three Stooges gags and did them ourselves. So it was greatly influenced by the Three Stooges.
So where would you show these films? In classrooms and at home? Or?
Yes, exactly. To the other students.
Would you charge money?
Sure. As much as we could get. Usually a quarter.
I'm the Pillsbury Doughboy with fresh cooking ideas. What are you doing? No one too near hit me. Help!
Sam and his school friends had ambitious plans. They wanted to raise money for a full-length feature. And although their Super 8s had been mostly comedies, they decided their first real film would be horror.
Sam and I first decided to do a horror film after doing research on what pictures did well in the markets. And at the time, which was the late 70s, there were still a lot of drive-ins, especially in the Midwest where we grew up. And there were forever horror films playing in the drive-ins on double bills and that, which we always saw and said, God, we can make something better than this. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So up until the time we decided to make a feature film, we had done mainly comedies and decided that horror is the entry level that most people used and decided to make the ultimate experience in horror at the time.
Robert Tappert, Bruce Campbell, and myself all bought business suits and matching briefcases and dropped out of school. Then we worked as waiters, busboys, janitors, cab drivers.
So how old were you then?
18. And Bruce was 19 and Robert was 22 at the time.
We would sit down and pretend that we were businessmen. That was all part of the filmmaking process. We thought we had to do it because it never occurred to us to go to California because it was 3,000 miles away. And we thought we'd have as good a chance raising money independently, and it finally worked.
We first got jobs so that we could raise seed money. Then we hired attorneys to put together a legal offering saying, in legal terms, if X person invests X amount of money, they own X percentage in this movie that we're going to make. We then made a Super 8 movie called Within the Woods. And this was a small version of the screenplay I had written for Evil Dead. The reason we made this picture was to show the potential investors that these kids, us, that we could make a picture that worked, a horror movie that actually could scare them. I mean, that was our goal, at least. I hope it scared them.
Well, loser gets the door.
We wanted to have a terrible creature, a spirit, something that floated through the woods at a different height than we're used to seeing things. So we used a shaky cam. We came up with a board where we mounted the camera in the middle, and the lens acted as the axis point. And it's ended up smoothing out the point of view because the longer the board was that the camera was mounted on, the jiggle, this effect, well, cinema verite there, decreased proportionate to the length of the board. So it gave us a very eerily smooth look, and it seemed to work out okay.
Within the Woods was made as the bait for potential investors, but the tricky part was to get them to watch it.
What we did was we would call them and say, yes, we're a friend of Dr. Perkinson's, and he has given us your name and said that although he could not invest, you might be able to. Well, I certainly can invest. I can't invest. I won't have anything to do with you. Well, why don't you let us come by your house and show you our picture within the woods and see if you might be interested after that. Well, I'm not really interested. Well, we'll be by around 8 o'clock. So we'd kind of force our way in and get the foot in the door. Then we'd set up our Super 8 projector and show the movies on his dining room wall, take down some art, and proceed to make them sick, and then hopefully get the investment out of them.
We had dentists, a couple of dentists go in. We had some real estate people. But it was tough to get people who had money who were merchants, who owned stores, because a lot of those people had money, and we would approach them. They're used to paying money and getting heads of lettuce or bottles of wine, and we wanted them to give us money for nothing, for this movie that might be successful, might not. And I remember we showed this first little Super 8 movie in the detergent aisle of a grocery store after it closed to a couple of merchants, and they didn't invest. But we really went to absolutely anybody who was financially capable of losing all their money.
Their perseverance paid off. After dozens of private screenings, they finally raised $90,000 and The Evil Dead got underway. It's got all the ingredients of a classic horror film. 5 teenagers, a deserted log cabin, a car that won't start, a thunderstorm, and a tape recorder with a mysterious message.
Shut it off. Shut it off.
I was the pseudo-hero, Ash, who was really just one of 5 generic people at the beginning, and then through a trial by fire, I kind of wise up a little bit and live.
Why pseudo-hero?
Because he's kind of an idiot. You know, if he hears a sound, he goes outside. He looks through doors that you know he shouldn't, so he's not really very smart.
But then that's the staple of horror movies, isn't it?
Oh, you have to. If they were smart enough not to go to the cabin, you wouldn't have a movie. So, you know, they show up and it's a creepy place. Well, let's go in. You know, and they found a tape recorder with some weird sayings on it. Oh, that sounds great. Let's play that. You know, and then people are possessed and like, oh, what do we do now? And you can't be too smart the first couple of times, so you let some monsters kill some innocent people. But it's important to have victims. So we were really, 5 of us were victims. So I was a pseudo-hero only because I was really a victim for most of the movie.
Did you feel under a lot of pressure while you were shooting it?
Yes, I felt under great pressure. And it was not artistic pressure, it was all financial pressure, because there were no expectations on me as a kid. It was all a question of, I have $90,000 of these people's money who I promised I would make a good movie out of. This has got to be good. It's strange, but that's where I was coming from back then.
So what do you think would have happened if the movie hadn't been a hit?
Well, then I would be selling air conditioners again, which I'm pretty good at. You see this little baby that'll put out 200 BTUs. It'll cool a room basically 20 by 40, and if you want to blow it around with a fan, I got that too. Sell air conditioners was terrible.
So did they make the money back?
In fact, on Evil Dead #1, we've returned to the investors about 3.5 times our original investment.
How much control did they exercise over the movie? Did they keep in touch and keep an eye on how things were going?
No, they were very good to us, actually, the investors. They never hassled us. We would give them a bi-weekly letter to tell them where we were and what was going on. At this point, the picture is in editing, the picture is in music, the picture is in dubbing. And then we sent them 2 invitations to the world premiere.
Effects are done very simply, but they're really effective. I mean, why is it you think other people spend so much time and money doing things that often don't look as good?
I think it's the same syndrome for all low-budget filmmakers. They just don't have the money to do it right, so they've got to do it. They've got to sit down and figure it out. Well, how can I make somebody float? Well, something has to lift them up. Well, what's going to lift them up? Wires? I don't have wires thin enough, nor do I have a rig to mount to the ceiling of this place. What else? So I think it's just common sense.
So do you think as you move into a bigger budget that you might lose some of your common sense and start?
Yeah, I think that happens. I think you suddenly say, how can I get someone to float? An anti-grav disc. How much will it cost to make an anti-grav disc? I think that is a danger. A number of the investors came up to me after the movie and said, and they were a little bit angry, "You told me you were going to make a horror picture. Now this is a comedy." Well, it's a horror picture with elements of comedy. But when the checks started coming in, when it turned out that we had made something that could actually sell, they loosened up and realized that we hadn't let them down.
How did you go about getting a distribution deal?
Rob Tappert, Bruce Campbell, and myself went to the home of distributors, New York, first, and we crashed on people's floors. And I remember one place, we didn't have enough money to rent a hotel room or a motel room, so Bruce called this girl that he knew liked him. "Say, Betty, I'm gonna come by your place. I'm in town." "Oh, great, come on by, Bruce." "Hey, can I stay the night?" "Sure, I'd love it." She was coming on to him in Detroit. So Bruce shows up at her door. She opens it. "Bruce, Rob and I are there." "Hello, hello, we're here too." She went, "Oh, you're all here. Okay, come on in. You can stay the night." So it was a nightmare. To use this woman's apartment, we had to dupe her, first of all. And then Rob and I would hear this horrible struggle going on in the back room. This apartment was no bigger than this room. Her advances on Bruce. Meanwhile, I was trying to fall asleep, pretending it didn't exist. She had 6 cats in this apartment. Not that I was in any position to complain, mind you. I'm just saying that when I awoke, I slept in a bed of cat hair. When I awoke, my face had all puffed out. It was a nightmare. We'd ride the subways with our film cans in hand, show them to distributors in screening rooms, wait outside nervously, drinking coffee, pacing around, reciting the lines that we would say to him about how good we thought it would be, and rehearsing our dialogue. We'd come in when the movie was over. He'd be sleeping, you know. "Is it over?" So we had a lot of very discouraging experiences. All no's.
Luckily for Sam, the film met with a different response in Europe. After a screening at the Cannes Film Festival, it was picked up for distribution in Britain by Palace Pictures.
The UK audience embraced it, and they made it a big hit, along with very good marketing of Palace Pictures, of course. And after that, the United States said, "What's that? What's that little horror picture that's doing so well over there?"
Despite its popularity, the film has one scene that some people found offensive. In it, one of the teenage girls is brutally assaulted in and by the woods. As a result, the film was almost banned from release on video. You regret putting it in?
I do. I do.
On what grounds?
Well, I think it was unnecessarily gratuitous and a little too brutal. And finally, because people were offended in a way that my goal is not to offend people. It is to entertain, thrill, scare, make them laugh, but not to offend them. But, you know, I know a lot of 19-year-olds that are stealing cars and murdering people. Not to make that comparison, but I think my judgment was a little wrong at that time.
Hello? No, this is 4724. That's quite all right.
Good morning. It's Mr. Kent, isn't it?
Yeah,
Mrs. Kent, well?
surviving, I think. Listen, have you got anything on mortgages?
Oh, yes, you've got a mortgage with us, haven't you? Thinking of moving?
It's either that or suffocate under cuddly toys.
Oh. Well, here you are. Everything you need to know about mortgages. We do a whole range of them. And you've got a great scheme which cuts out the need for a deposit.
Oh, really? So if we find somewhere that...
Okay, look, pop back when you have more time.
Right. Bye.
Bye. Good luck.
Nationwide Anglia, helping you make the most of your money.
Du hast einige Leute ziemlich verblüfft in der Firma.
Oh ja? Warum?
Darum. Wenn ich die Wahl hätte...
Ich mag einfach die Art, wie er gebaut ist.
Ich verstehe, was du meinst. Schnell?
In England nennen sie es Fastback. Wann musst du bei der Staatsgalerie sein?
Wir kommen gut voran.
Faszinierendes Gebäude.
Ja, stimmt.
Britischer Architekt.
Prompted by the rather spooky success of their decaffeinated Red Mountain, the Brookbond Boffins, I rather like that word, have brought out this dainty sampler jar. So now all you little paupers can enjoy it too.
Decaffeinated Red Mountain. It's like ground coffee taste without the caffeine.
With the success of Evil Dead, Sam was suddenly considered a hot young talent, and Hollywood beckoned. The result was a deal with the studio, Embassy, and a new film, a comedy thriller called Crimewave. Sadly, it was not quite what Sam wanted it to be.
The problem with that movie, one of its many problems, was it didn't know what it was about. It was a comedy, it was a drama, it was an adventure picture, it was a love story, and it turned out to be none of the above.
But what did you intend it to be?
I wanted it to be the ultimate picture of entertainment. To thrill, chill, make the audience laugh, cry, scream. They screamed for their money back.
Well, it really wasn't that bad, and it contained some wonderful set pieces, like this one.
I'm gonna tear out your...
We were dealing with unions for the first time, and so we didn't schedule it properly. Again, we didn't budget it properly. So we started to go over schedule, over budget, and the studio people said, you know, they'd fly in their cutthroat men and say, you know, what pages do we tear out here, you know? And so the script would be revised in order to stay on schedule, and it was a lot of give and take. We didn't have nearly the freedom as our first film because investors aren't going to come on the set. A dentist isn't going to say, are you sure that camera angle is right? you know, how many pages did you shoot today? They don't care. So they never set foot on the set, but with Crimewave, they were in our face all the time, and it was a very tough experience.
They replaced my actors. They threw Bruce Campbell out of the lead. They threw out my musician, Joe LaDuca. They recut the picture. They had their own say with the sound effects and mix. They did everything they could to make it what it is today.
Despite the problems he had in making it and its subsequent failure at the box office, Crimewave still has many moments of great originality. Although Sam now has projects in development for the major studio Universal, he hasn't totally abandoned the world of low-budget independent movies. Here we are in downtown Los Angeles, on the set of Night Crew, a new shocker directed by Sam's old school friend and co-writer, Scott Spiegel. Sam, tell us what you're doing here today. What are you working on?
This is a movie Scott's making called Night Crew, horror picture, and I play a small role of Randy the Butcher.
He does cute things like eat olives, and the killer's placed a eyeball in a jar of olives. And he's just about to eat it, and, well, you'll see the movie. And he does all kinds of funny things and cool things until his grisly demise on a meat hook.
Get set for an all-night chopping spree with The Night Crew, starring Elizabeth Cox of 16 Candles and Sam Raimi, director of Evil Dead 1 and 2.
Good evening, Walnut Lake shoppers.
It's closing time,
The store will be closing in 15 minutes.
but The Night Crew still has work to do.
Oh my God, we're gonna get in so much trouble.
Because there's one last customer who isn't satisfied.
No, this creep keeps calling her. He's driving us nuts. Leave me alone.
He wants to slash their prices. Now, he's turning their retail store.
There's gonna be one more killing here tonight.
Into a wholesale slaughterhouse.
I'm just crazy about this store.
Night Crew.
Thank you for shopping at Walnut Lake Market.
This is Night Crew, and this actually aren't what you think they are. It has nothing to do with a cow. These are human parts.
Which one of those was Sam?
Let's see. Well, the ham's not here, so. Just kidding. A little joke.
Okay.
Any idea where it might be?
Fine.
Okay, fine. Just let's do it.
It should be here.
Ready? Let me know when the camera is ready to reload, okay?
Sam?
Yeah.
Hey, buddy, you don't need to go in that meat cooler. I can't see that door opening.
Okay.
So.
You got it.
Now maybe?
You
Wait
got
a
it,
minute.
right.
I lied. Just do your motions just like you did before. I lied.
Okay. You want any different? I'll give you whatever you want.
No, it's just fine.
Do you enjoy acting in other people's movies?
Yeah, I do. I especially do because it serves as very good instruction for me as a director. Because I can, as an actor, I hear direction and I think, oh, I see. Actors need more direction than he's giving here, or, gee, I'm really glad he said that. Because I wouldn't have as a director, and I realized that an actor would need that here. So I learn, I'm always learning bits and pieces about directing from just being in them.
Guys, whenever you're ready, please.
Okay.
Here we go.
It's like
And
just under. It's like two. The stuff is two. Okay.
ready? All right.
Speed.
Okay, that
Marker.
Action.
That's a cut. How was it?
David, I think you have to change the name.
When you came to write The Evil Dead 2 with Sam, what were you trying to do? How were you trying to make it differently to the first film?
Well, Sam and I were just trying to figure out, there's only so many things you can do in the horror genre without just repeating yourself. And we just thought that we might just make it as wild and maniacal as we humanly could. So we just went overboard, just over the top with everything. Some humorous, some gory, some scary.
Did Sam genuinely want to make Evil Dead 2, or was it just because that was the easiest project to get off the ground?
It was probably a combination of the two. I think after Crimewave, he wanted to, and I know just to make a movie that worked, and we knew that Evil Dead 2 would work, and that it had a certain audience, and it could make money for somebody, and that we could make a good picture out of it, which are really right reasons to make a movie. I know there are other tales that we may have rather have told, but they were much more expensive and beyond our range.
Evil Dead 2 was taken around by Robert Tappert, Bruce Campbell, and myself to about 12 different companies out in Los Angeles, financing distribution companies like Crown International, Columbia Pictures, MGM, Universal, and we met with constant rejection until we brought the script to De Laurentiis Entertainment Group, which is now, I think, defunct. But nevertheless, we showed the script to Dino, and he said, "How much you want for this picture?" So we said, we told him what we needed, which was basically $3.5 million to $4 million, and he said, "Okay."
We had all the figures for how the picture had done in all the theaters in Rome on Evil Dead. And so when we went to meet Dino, knowing that he knew all the theaters in Italy, we took him all the grosses of how it did in Rome, and he was able to go through them and say, "Okay, I'll make the movie." And that was, and it was just that simple. Once we got to Dino, it was one day, and then he said the next day, "Go to North Carolina, can you shoot it there?"
Evil Dead 2 didn't disappoint the fans. Picking up from where number 1 left off, it's faster, sharper, funnier, and scarier than its predecessor.
Rob and myself and Bruce thought that that was all there was to Evil Dead. This horrible creature came at Bruce and the movie ended. But Bruce was saved by positive box office response. And this time we were able to surround Bruce Campbell with a much higher caliber of professional actor, as opposed to just local Detroiters in the theater groups. Really, every aspect of the production was now manned by a professional, where before it was people who we could get off the street who would do it for next to nothing.
So how did that affect the way you worked?
It was wonderful. I was captain of a ship that now had trained professionals running the engine room and the steering deck, as opposed to trying to bail out water from my rowboat just to make sure I stayed afloat.
We didn't want to create a movie that would have, cause kids to have nightmares. That wasn't the goal. It was just to give them a roller coaster ride for 90 minutes and they could go home and forget about it. And so Evil Dead 2 was even more like that, really. We wanted to have a masser, a wider appeal. So we took out some of the real gore and put in a couple of Three Stooges type gags.
It's as much a black comedy as a horror film. This is one of the more bizarre scenes in which our hero, Bruce, is taunted by his own hand after having chopped it off. How much of the humor was intentional in?
In the hand scene, it was intentional. We tried to make it eerily funny.
There's an appalling pun in there, isn't there, concerning a Hemingway book. Have you got any shame, Sam?
No. Now when it comes to telling jokes, bad jokes for the audience, anything that could get a laugh, I'm usually in favor of.
Here's your new home.
With With a much bigger budget and more ambitious script for The Evil Dead 2, Sam knew that the special effects had to be absolutely top-notch. So he came here to a studio in Pasadena, California, to work with the man responsible for the Nightmare on Elm Street series, Mark Shostrom. Any favourite special effects scenes in the movie?
I think anything involving Henrietta, which is part of this creation here.
This is Henrietta in a later stage, isn't it?
This is Henrietta after his or her head transforms.
Oh, baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird.
Hey, I'll swallow your soul. I'll swallow your soul. I'll swallow your soul.
Swallow this.
And the poor unfortunate chosen to play Henrietta was Sam's brother, Ted Raimi.
We had to put Ted Raimi in a stunt harness on wires and put the suit on him and the makeup, you know, a 6-hour makeup job. So before the day even began, he was extremely uncomfortable. They hoisted him on the wires. He's floating around the room. He's got contact lenses in. He's sweating. And Sam's going, look this way. Yeah, okay, now act. Now hit your mark. And it took about 3 days to shoot that whole scene.
It sounds like the worst job in the world.
For Ted Raimi, I'm sure it was.
Is that why he used his brother? He knew he could get away with it?
Sam knew he could. It was a very smart move.
How happy do you feel with the finished product, Evil Dead 2?
It's okay. I think it's okay. It was a fine picture to make when I was 26, and now that I'm 28, I want to make a picture that's probably about 10 times as good.
For God's sake! How do you stop it?
The final scenes of Evil Dead 2 left Sam the option of bringing back Bruce at least one more time, although there are no plans at the moment. Instead, Sam is intent on making a film which he hopes will reach a much wider audience than just horror fans.
Oh man, he's got the best visual style of anyone around today. An incredible visual style and a sense of pacing, which is another thing that I think is very important in directing.
I think he learns an incredible amount every time he makes a movie. And I think that's a good indication because the more he makes, I think the better he's going to get.
I'm waiting for him to reach his full potential, because then I think he'll make a movie that everyone will respect. I mean, something that is of a Capra or a Spielberg. I think he has those qualities of a great director.
I love movies, and I love entertaining the audience, or I love trying to entertain the audience. I'm not making any bold claims. I'm just saying my goal is to thrill people with the movies, and hopefully, when I'm a good enough filmmaker, to not enlighten, but what I mean to say is uplift them. Uplift them, that's the word I mean to say.
next week, in the last of the series, Jonathan Ross heads for the Hollywood Hills to meet Russ Meyer, director of such films as Super Vixens and the cult classic Faster Pussycat, Kill, Kill. The Incredibly Strange Film Show is at 10:30 next Friday.